In the heart of Nairobi, where the city lights dance to the rhythm of the night and secrets lurk in every shadow, there lived two men who were more than friends, they were brothers. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, the line between friendship and betrayal began to blur, leading to a night that none would ever forget. It was a typical Friday evening at the Savannah Bistro, a popular spot for the city's elite. John sat at his usual table, sipping his black coffee, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. David, his best friend and business partner, arrived late as usual, a wide grin plastered on his face.
John, you look like you're plotting the next big heist. What's on your mind, brother? Just thinking about the future, David. We've come a long way from those dusty streets, haven't we?
David chuckled, oblivious to the storm brewing in John's mind. They had built an empire together, rising from nothing to become one of the most successful real estate developers in the city. But success, like a double-edged sword, had its price.
Speaking of the future, did you see the new proposal from the governor's office? We could be swimming in money if we play our cards right. Yes, I saw it. But let's talk about that later. How's Linda doing? I haven't seen her around lately.
Linda, John's wife, had been the light of his life, a beautiful, intelligent woman who had captured his heart from the moment they met. But lately, there had been a distance between them, a coldness that John couldn't ignore. Linda, John's wife, was more than just the light of his life. Before she became his partner, she was a rising star in Nairobi's social circles, known for her charm and sharp intellect. But her path had crossed with David's long before John came into the picture. Years ago, when Linda was still carving out her place in the world, she and David shared a different kind of connection, one that was intense, electrifying, and ultimately tumultuous. Their relationship began in the vibrant, bustling markets of Nairobi, where they first locked eyes over a spilled crate of mangoes. David, with his roguish grin and magnetic energy, was drawn to Linda's quick wit and fiery ambition.
Careful there, you're making quite a mess.
And you're making quite a spectacle. Are you always this charming, or is it just for show? Their flirtations quickly turned into a passionate affair, driven by a shared hunger for success and a reckless abandon that both exhilarated and terrified them. Together, they were unstoppable, fueling each other's dreams and desires, but also feeding into a cycle of manipulation and deceit. However, as their ambitions soared, their relationship began to fracture. David's craving for power and Linda's insatiable drive created a volatile mix. Their partnership, once electric, started to unravel under the strain of competing desires and unresolved conflicts. Linda wanted more than David could offer, something solid, something lasting. And so, she set her sights on a new target, a man who could provide the stability and success she craved. Enter John, a man who, unlike David, was grounded, reliable, and deeply in love with Linda. She saw in John not just a partner but a stepping stone to the life she envisioned. When John and Linda's relationship grew serious, David, who had kept the past with Linda under wraps, introduced her to John as a dear friend. The history between Linda and David remained hidden, buried beneath the surface. But the plot thickened when John and Linda decided to take a break from each other, seeking space to reassess their relationship. During this separation, Linda found herself drawn back to David. Their old connection, long dormant, rekindled with surprising intensity. The break from John brought Linda and David even closer, reigniting their past flame and allowing them to slip into old patterns of desire and manipulation. However, unknown to John and David, Linda's re-entry into David's life was far from coincidental. The real estate world was ruthless, and their business had caught the attention of powerful men who wanted control over a lucrative deal from the governor's office. The proposal was a goldmine, and David and John were the only obstacles in the way. These men knew they needed an insider, someone who could get close, gather information, and dismantle the partnership from within. Linda, with her ties to both men, was the perfect candidate. Linda, sensing an opportunity to climb even higher in the social and business circles, made a deal with these men. She would use her influence over David and John to sabotage their efforts and ensure the deal slipped out of their hands. In return, she would be rewarded with a significant stake in the new venture, one that would solidify her position among Nairobi's elite. What she didn't anticipate was how her own emotions would complicate the plan, setting the stage for a betrayal that would shake their world to its core.
She's fine, I guess. You know women, always busy with their own things.
John's eyes narrowed slightly. Something in David's tone felt off. But before he could press further, David's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and his grin faltered for just a fraction of a second.
Sorry, John, I've got to run. Let's catch up tomorrow.
John watched as David left the cafe in a hurry, a knot tightening in his chest. Something wasn't right. And John had a feeling he was about to uncover something that would change everything. That night, John couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the strange encounter at the cafe. Linda had been distant, yes, but he had never questioned her loyalty until now. As the clock struck midnight, John made a decision that would lead him down a path of no return.
If there's something to find, I'll find it tonight.
John drove to David's apartment, a place he had been countless times before. But tonight, the familiarity felt tainted. He parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, his heart pounding in his chest. The door was unlocked. John's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but curiosity, no, desperation, pushed him forward. The living room was dark, but a soft light glowed from under the bedroom door.
David.
No answer. He pushed the door open, and what he saw made his blood run cold. There, in David's bed, was Linda, his wife, wrapped in the sheets, her face a mask of shock and guilt. And beside her, with a look of pure terror, was David. John, I can explain. Explain. Oh, John had heard that word before. But what explanation could justify this betrayal? The room seemed to spin as rage, sorrow, and disbelief battled for control within him.
John, it was a mistake. We didn't mean for this to happen.
But before David could finish, John lunged at him, fist flying, the years of friendship crumbling in an instant. The fight was brutal, raw, a reflection of the pain that had been festering in John's heart. Stop it. Both of you, stop. But the words fell on deaf ears. It wasn't until John had David pinned against the wall, his hands wrapped around his throat, that a strange calm washed over him. He released David, who slumped to the floor, gasping for air.
I trusted you, both of you. But now it's over.
John stormed out of the apartment, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, heartbreak, but also something else. Something dark and twisted that he couldn't quite understand. As he drove aimlessly through the city, the pieces began to fall into place.
How could they do this to me? How could she, with him?
But then, a thought struck him.
What if this wasn't about love or lust? What if there was something more? Something sinister?
John's phone rang, the screen flashing David's name. He hesitated, then answered.
John, you don't understand. There's more to this. I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice. No choice. What the hell are you talking about? It's Linda. She's not who you think she is. She's been controlling everything, our business, our lives. She's dangerous, John. I tried to stop her, but she threatened to destroy everything.
John's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Could it be true? Could Linda, the woman he loved, be behind it all? He had to know the truth. John returned home, his mind racing. Linda was waiting for him, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something he had never seen before, a glint of cold, calculating cunning. "John, I can explain everything."
Save it. David told me everything. You've been playing us both, haven't you?
For a moment, Linda's facade cracked, and John saw the truth. She wasn't the victim in this twisted game. She was the puppet master. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for, John. Yes, I played you both. But it wasn't personal. It was just business." John felt a chill run down his spine. The woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted, had been manipulating him all along. But why? What was her endgame?
Why, Linda? Why would you do this?
Because, John, you and David were in the way. There was a deal, a huge deal with the governor's office. The men who sent me, they wanted that deal, and they knew you two were the only ones standing in their way. I was just doing what needed to be done. John felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't about love or betrayal. This was about power. Linda had used him, twisted him, all for the sake of ambition. But now, it was time to end it.
I'm not going to let you get away with this, Linda.
And what are you going to do, John? You can't stop me. You never could. But Linda had underestimated John. He wasn't the same man who had walked into that cafe earlier that day. He was a man pushed to the brink, a man who had nothing left to lose. In the final moments of their confrontation, as the truth spilled out and the lies unraveled, John made a choice that would seal their fates. Morning came with a storm that seemed to wash away the sins of the night before, but the darkness inside John's home was far from cleansed. The police arrived at the scene, called by a neighbor who had heard the commotion. The living room was a mess, broken glass and overturned furniture telling the story of a violent struggle. John sat on the couch, his hands shaking as he stared blankly at the wall. Linda lay on the floor, unconscious but breathing, her face a portrait of her own downfall. The police took in the scene, their eyes narrowing as they tried to piece together what had happened.
"Sir, we need you to tell us what happened here."
But John could barely speak. The events of the night felt like a nightmare from which he couldn't wake up. He had lost everything, his wife, his best friend, his life as he knew it. But the truth, the horrible, twisted truth, was now out in the open. And with it, came the consequences.
It was her. She was behind everything. She was going to destroy us all.
The officers exchanged glances, their skepticism clear. But as they led John out of the house, his mind began to clear. He had fought back, had taken control, but the cost was unimaginable. Linda had pushed him to the brink, but in the end, it was John who had made the final decision, one that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Days passed, and John found himself sitting alone in a cold, grey cell, the events of that night replaying endlessly in his mind. The trial was inevitable, the charges severe. But as he waited for his fate to be decided, a visitor came to see him, a man he never expected to see again.
John.
John looked up, his eyes narrowing as he saw David standing on the other side of the bars. He looked disheveled, a shadow of the confident man he once knew. But there was something else in his eyes, regret, maybe even guilt.
"What are you doing here, David? Come to finish what you started." "No, John. I'm here to make things right, or at least, try to."
David sat down, his hands trembling as he spoke. He confessed everything, the affair, the lies, the manipulation. But there was more, something that neither John nor Linda had known.
Linda wasn't just trying to protect you, John. She was in deeper than either of us realized. Those men, they were ruthless. They saw how successful we were becoming and decided to take advantage. They knew we had access to the governor's office, knew we could make or break that real estate deal.
John listened in silence, his anger simmering beneath the surface. But as David spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. Linda's sudden change, her cold demeanor, the way she had manipulated them both, it was all part of a larger plan, one that had spiraled out of control.
So it was never about us. It was about them. But why involve Linda? Why go to such lengths? Linda used to be involved with them long before she met you. She knew their tactics, their methods. They used her past against her, blackmailing her into manipulating us. She had no choice but to play along, even if it meant betraying you.
David handed John a small, crumpled piece of paper, a name, a location. It was the key to everything, the missing link that could expose the truth. But it also meant stepping into a world that neither of them fully understood.
And what am I supposed to do with this? Use it. Find them. End this. Because if you don't, they'll keep coming after us until there's nothing left.
Weeks later, after his release on bail, John found himself standing in the middle of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place reeked of decay and danger, but it was here that he would find the answers he sought. The answers that would finally put an end to this nightmare. John stepped into the shadows, his eyes scanning the dimly lit room. The men who had pulled the strings, who had used Linda like a pawn, were here. And now, it was time to face them.
So, you're the famous John. We've heard a lot about you. I'm not here to talk. I'm here to end this.
The leader laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the empty space. But John wasn't intimidated. He had come too far, lost too much, to back down now. As the men closed in, John knew this was it, the final confrontation that would decide everything. The fight was brutal, chaotic, a blur of fist, blood, and desperation. But John fought with a ferocity born of pain and betrayal, his determination fueling every strike. He was outnumbered, but he had the advantage of surprise and the element of desperation that made him unstoppable. In the end, it was over as quickly as it began. The men lay defeated, groaning in pain, their leader unconscious on the floor. John stood over them, breathing heavily, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. He had done it. He had ended the threat. But at what cost? The police arrived soon after, tipped off by an anonymous call. They found John standing alone amidst the wreckage, his hands covered in blood, both his own and that of his enemies. The men were arrested, and the truth behind Linda's betrayal was finally revealed. John knew there would be consequences, but for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. He had uncovered the truth, fought for his life, and survived. Linda's fate remained unknown. She had vanished into the night, leaving behind only the shattered pieces of their lives. But John knew that wherever she was, she would never be able to run from the consequences of her actions.
This isn't the end. But it's a new beginning.
And so, as the storm clouds cleared and the first rays of dawn touched the city, John walked away from the warehouse, leaving behind the ghost of his past. He had lost everything, but in doing so, he had found something more valuable, himself. In the end, betrayal may break us, but it can also reveal who we truly are. And for John, the journey of healing and redemption had just begun. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more captivating stories, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We've got plenty more dramatic twists and unforgettable narratives coming your way. For more stories filled with drama, suspense, and unexpected twists, check out another one of our videos. Just click the link appearing on the screen now or find it in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.